Let's talk some Alabama recruiting. Now, when it comes to the transfer portal, Bama's lost 13 players to the portal. And as of Sunday morning, no commitments out of the portal just yet. But I'm sure that's going to change. And there's been some big names on campus the past few days. So I got Andrew Bone from Bama Online in this video. We're going to break down who could be the next big commitment for Alabama out of the portal. But first, Bama fans, do me a favor, slap that subscribe button. We're going to be here talking Tide recruiting all year long, so jump on board and hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Andrew Bone, Bama Online. Andrew, I said 13 transfers out. Some probably needed to go. Others were contributors. So should Bama fans be concerned with the number of departures at this point?
I don't think there's any reason to be concerned. You have 13 guys that have entered the portal. When you look at the overall numbers right now, as far as seniors who are out of eligibility after this season, guys who are early enrollees, that number is currently at 85 for the guys that are going to be coming in next year. So now you're kind of waiting to see who's going to forego their senior season, enter the NFL draft. And there obviously could still be some more changes. You can still see some more guys enter the transfer portal over the course of the next week or so. But as of right now, that number is at 85. So you have to lose some players. And unfortunately for Alabama, they recruit at such a high level year in and year out that you are going to lose big name players that you recruited from years past or the previous year. That's just going to be the nature of the beast in the transfer portal era. I don't think Alabama really lost anybody that they saw as necessarily major impact contributors next season. I mean, Justice Haynes was the number 2 running back. If Jam Miller decides to return for his senior season, which is very possible, as Charlie Potter on BOL stated this past weekend. With Caleb Odom, big name guy that Alabama was able to sign last year. Now that's the guy that entered the portal and that everybody kind of, I would say not necessarily freaked out about, but it was an eye opener for a lot of people. But with him playing wide receiver, you've got Ryan Williams coming back next season.
Yeah.
Potentially Jermaine Bernard coming back next season. So that wide receiver room is still going to be pretty talented at Alabama. I think the biggest surprise to everyone, including myself, was Devontae Smith. He's would be a 5th-year senior next year.
Yeah.
This is a guy that's been at Alabama for would be at Alabama for 5 years, then been there for 4. Was a team leader, was a guy that is a starter, but is also a room that has some talent. Deshaun Jones, who Alabama was able to pick up from Wake Forest last year from the transfer portal. You have Red Morgan, who's a freshman who played a lot this season. But as of right now, he's probably – Devontae Smith probably the biggest surprise for everyone just because of the amount of playing time that he had received and would expect to receive next season.
Yeah, and I say this all the time about the portal, and it specifically applies when I talk Alabama, but I always say the tide goes out, the tide comes back in. Now for Alabama, the tide hasn't come back in yet, but it's about to. So defensive line we know is a major position of need for the Tide. Who is Alabama targeting right now?
I think the biggest name that we're following this weekend is Kelby Collins. Kelby Collins, a former Gardendale native, Gardendale, Alabama native, been at Florida the last couple seasons. Has been in Tuscaloosa the last few days for an official visit. Now, he was also at Texas A&M, has a visit scheduled to South Carolina this upcoming week. We'll see if that visit happens. But this is a kid that's very familiar with the Alabama football program, very familiar with Freddie Roach, defensive line coach, who was there at Alabama when Kelby was originally getting recruited. Plus, he was his area recruiter. So they've got a great relationship. He's been in Tuscaloosa throughout the weekend. Everything we've heard, things have gone extremely well. So that's one guy that we're watching. Another player is Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, former Texas A&M defensive lineman. We reported that last week on BOL that there's definitely some mutual interest there. So we're watching to see if he potentially comes in for a visit this week.
All right. So we know also the Tide are looking for some talented wide receivers, some explosion at the position. Who is on the board right now for Alabama?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, wide receiver position is a little tricky because when you're out there recruiting a wide receiver, you're also knowing that, or those players know that Ryan Williams is going to be coming back.
Yeah.
Jermaine Bernard may be coming back as well. And Alabama recruits the position really well. They're bringing in some top guys like Derek Meadows, Latzir Brooks. So you're going out there, you're trying to find somebody that can potentially come in and be okay with being a complimentary type wide receiver to some of those guys. So Casey Concepcion, who is from NC State, played at NC State the last 2 seasons, Charlotte native. He was in Tuscaloosa for an official this past weekend. Doesn't seem like he's going to end up being a part of Alabama's class, at least not yet. He's going to take a visit to Colorado. We're going to kind of continue to wait and see what Alabama decides to do there. But they're going to bring some other guys in this week. One guy starting on Monday, Mario Craver, who is originally from Clay Chalkville High School in Alabama. Was one of the most explosive players in the state during his senior season. Played at Mississippi State. Now he's coming back for an official with Alabama. So we'll see. With Alabama, I don't think they're in necessarily I know that the transfer portal is only 20 days, but they're not necessarily in a major rush to add someone really quickly at the position. I think they want to bring some guys in at the wide receiver position, at least at the wide receiver position. Bring some guys in, evaluate them, because they're meeting all of these guys essentially for the first time. So it's basically an interview rather than, hey, we need you to commit right this very moment. It's an interview, and there's they've got some options there, and I think they're going to be just fine at wide receiver when all is said and done.
All right, Andrew, who do you think could be the next major addition from the portal for Alabama? Any position?
Well, we're watching Kelby Collins really closely right now, and you never know what could happen. Things change on a dime in the transfer
That'd be
portal
a big
world.
one.
Whether it's Alabama would love to bring in a tight end, they'd love to bring in potentially a linebacker this week, but from what we're watching right now, it's going to be Kelby Collins as far as the guy that we think could be next to jump on board. So if he decides to cancel the visit to South Carolina, I would say Alabama's got a great shot there.
All right, Alabama fans, talk to Andrew Bowen and I. How are you guys feeling about the portal? Who do you think is going to be the next major commitment for the Tide? Let us know. Comment section below.